The neighborhood looked like it came from a brochure. Clean sidewalks, identical mailboxes, lawns cut to the same height because the HOA rules said they had to be. People waved when they passed each other, but never stopped for long conversations. Everything was orderly, controlled, and calm on the surface. This was the kind of place where neighbors complained about parking too close to the curb or leaving trash cans out too long, but claimed it was all about keeping standards high. Safety was always mentioned. Community values were always emphasized. Parents felt comfortable letting their kids walk to the bus stop alone. Doors were often unlocked during the day. People trusted that nothing bad could happen here because bad things happened elsewhere, in rougher places, not behind white fences and manicured hedges. That belief made everyone relax just enough to stop paying attention. The schoolgirl walked these streets every day. She knew which houses had dogs and which ones had motion lights that flicked on at night. She knew which neighbors smiled at her and which ones looked through her like she was invisible. To her, the neighborhood felt boring, predictable, safe. She had walked this route dozens of times without a second thought, her backpack slung over one shoulder, shoes scuffing the pavement, mind on homework and what she would eat when she got home. What no one noticed was how quiet it really was. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind where people were inside their homes, blinds half closed, TVs on, attention elsewhere. The kind of quiet where something could happen without drawing a crowd. The kind of quiet that lets danger move unnoticed. When the attack happened, it did not come with warning signs anyone wanted to see. No loud argument. No obvious struggle at first. Just two people stepping too close, voices low, bodies blocking the view from the street. From a distance, it could have looked like a disagreement or someone scolding a child. That is the danger of places like this. People assume everything is normal because it usually is. Some neighbors saw pieces of it. A movement that felt off. A sound that did not belong. A child's voice raised in fear. But each person hesitated. Maybe someone else would step in. Maybe they were misunderstanding what they were seeing. Maybe it was not their business. The HOA culture had trained them well. Follow the rules. Avoid conflict. Do not get involved. The street that once felt safe turned into something else entirely. The same sidewalks that hosted morning joggers and evening dog walkers became a silent stage. Windows stayed shut. Doors stayed closed. The rules about minding your own business suddenly mattered more than a child's safety. This was not an alley or an abandoned lot. This was a place with posted speed limits and neighborhood watch signs. A place where people paid dues every month and believed that structure alone kept them safe. The contrast made the situation harder to process. Violence did not fit the setting, so people struggled to accept it was real. The schoolgirl was small compared to the adults around her. Her fear was immediate and overwhelming. She did not understand how the same street she walked every day could betray her so quickly. She looked for help where she expected it to be. Familiar houses. Familiar cars. Familiar faces that had smiled at her before. None of them moved. What happened next exposed something uncomfortable about the neighborhood. Not just that danger could exist there, but that comfort had made people slow. Slow to react. Slow to protect. Slow to believe that a child could be harmed right in front of them. The HOA rules were designed to control appearances, not behavior. They could fine someone for peeling paint or an unapproved mailbox, but they could not force courage. They could not make people step outside when something went wrong. The order everyone depended on became a shield for inaction. By the time anyone truly understood what was happening, the moment had already spiraled beyond control. The quiet street that sold itself as safe had revealed its real weakness. Not the lack of cameras or patrols, but the silence of people who believed bad things could not happen here, and therefore did not act when they did from the outside. Everything looked ordinary. Two adults. A child. A familiar street. The kind of scene people see every day and barely register. That normal appearance was the cover. It was what allowed the abuse to happen in plain sight without triggering immediate alarm. Nothing looked dramatic enough to force attention. Nothing broke the visual rules people relied on to decide when to step in. Abuse often hides this way. It borrows the shape of normal life. A raised voice that sounds like discipline. A firm grip that could be mistaken for guidance. A child being held too close, steered too forcefully, silenced too quickly. To someone glancing from a window or passing by in a car, it could all be explained away in seconds. People like explanations that let them keep moving. The attackers understood this, even if they never said it out loud. They knew how to blend in, how to keep their movements just subtle enough, how to position themselves so the child was partially blocked from view, how to lower their voices so fear sounded like misbehavior instead of distress. They relied on the fact that adults are usually given the benefit of the doubt, and children rarely are. The schoolgirl felt the difference immediately. What looked normal to others felt wrong to her body. Too close, too tight, too threatening. She tried to pull away, but the pressure increased. She tried to speak, but fear tangled her words. In moments like that, children realize how small they are in a world built to trust adults by default. The neighborhood's polished image worked against her. This was not a place people associated with danger. There were no broken windows, no graffiti, no reputation for crime. Because of that, the idea of abuse felt out of place, almost inappropriate. People did not want to believe it. Belief would have required action, and action would have disrupted the comfort they paid for. Abuse thrives in these gaps between perception and reality. It survives because it does not always look like what people expect. It does not announce itself. It slips into familiar shapes and trusted roles. A calm tone can hide violent intent. A steady posture can hide control. The absence of chaos becomes its camouflage. The child's fear was invisible unless someone chose to really look. Her body language, the stiffness, the panic in her eyes, the way she stopped moving because movement only made things worse. These were signals, but they were quiet ones. And quiet signals are easy to miss when people are not listening for them. What made it worse was how quickly the situation was normalized in the minds of onlookers. Someone probably thought she was being punished. Someone else assumed it was a family issue. Another person decided it was not their place to interfere. Each assumption built a wall between the abuse and intervention. The attackers did not need to overpower the whole neighborhood. They only needed everyone else to hesitate. They needed the comfort of normality to work in their favor. The belief that bad people look a certain way, act a certain way, stand out. As long as they looked like they belonged, they could keep going. This is how harm hides. Not in darkness, but in daylight. Not in chaos, but in order. The cleaner and calmer the setting, the easier it is to disguise cruelty as routine behavior. The more rules a place has about appearances, the less attention people sometimes pay to what is actually happening. For the schoolgirl, the betrayal was not just the attack itself, but the realization that normal did not mean safe. That adults could hurt her while looking composed. That a familiar street could turn threatening without changing its shape. That help did not always come just because something was wrong. Abuse depends on silence, but it also depends on disbelief. On the idea that something so awful could not possibly be happening here, to someone like her, in a place like this. That belief gave the attackers time. It gave them confidence. It gave them cover. Every second it continued, the gap between what was seen and what was real grew wider. And inside that gap, a child was being overpowered by adults who knew exactly how to hide behind the most convincing disguise of all. Looking normal, there were people who saw it. Not all of it, but enough. A glance from a window. A pause while walking a dog. Someone slowing their car just a little as they passed. Each person caught a fragment, a detail that did not quite sit right. A child being held too firmly. Bodies positioned in a way that blocked her movement. A sound that carried fear instead of attitude. No one reacted right away. That hesitation was not accidental. It was learned. In places like this, people are taught to stay in their lanes. Do not interfere. Do not accuse. Do not make a scene. The rules are not written on signs, but everyone knows them. Mind your business. Assume the best. Trust that someone else will handle it. The first instinct for many was doubt. Maybe it only looked bad from this angle. Maybe the child was acting out. Maybe the adults knew what they were doing. That doubt bought time. Time where no one stepped forward. Time where the situation tightened instead of loosening. Some people felt a flash of concern and then talked themselves out of it. They told themselves they did not have the full picture. They did not want to be wrong. Being wrong would mean embarrassment, confrontation, explaining themselves to neighbors later. It felt easier to look away than to risk being the person who overreacted. Others noticed and froze. Their bodies locked up as their minds raced. Should I call someone? Should I say something? What if they get angry? What if I make it worse? Fear does not always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like stillness. There was also the assumption that authority existed somewhere else. Someone believed a parent would show up. Someone else assumed the HOA patrol would drive by. Another thought maybe the police had already been called. Responsibility became something vague and shared, which meant no one actually carried it. Watching without acting creates a strange kind of distance. People become observers instead of participants. They analyze instead of intervene. They start narrating events in their heads instead of changing them. Every second spent watching made it harder to step in the next. The schoolgirl felt those eyes even though no one moved. She sensed she was not completely alone, and that made the silence worse. Hope flickered and then dimmed each time a door stayed closed or a car drove past. She did not understand why help was not coming, only that it was not. Bystanders often believe in a line that should not be crossed, but they argue internally about where that line is. Is this serious enough? Is it dangerous enough? Is it my place? While they debate, the moment passes. The line moves. What once would have demanded action starts to feel normal because it has already gone on too long. The neighborhood culture reinforced that paralysis. People here complained in emails and meetings, not face-to-face. They enforced rules through notices and fines, not confrontation. Direct action was uncomfortable. Speaking up was risky. Silence was familiar. Some bystanders later claimed they did not realize how bad it was. Others admitted they knew something was wrong, but did not think it would escalate. That belief, that things will resolve themselves, is powerful. It allows people to stay still while convincing themselves they are not responsible. There is a heavy difference between not knowing and not acting. In this case, too many people knew just enough. Enough to feel uneasy. Enough to remember it later. Not enough, they told themselves, to step in. When no one intervenes, harm gains momentum. The attackers read the room. They felt the absence of resistance. They understood that no one was coming. That understanding made them bolder, more confident, more willing to continue. The street did not erupt. No alarms went off. No crowd gathered. Life went on around the moment, detached and indifferent. A place full of people became a place where a child stood alone while being watched by many who chose to do nothing. The schoolgirl had never thought about fear this way before. Not as something that could take over her body so completely, so fast. One moment she was walking the same route she always walked, thinking about nothing important. The next, her world shrank to hands, pressure, and the sudden understanding that she was not in control anymore. Her body reacted before her thoughts could catch up. Her shoulders tightened. Her breath shortened. Her arms stiffened as she tried to pull back, but the grip on her only grew firmer. She felt how much stronger they were, how easily they could move her where they wanted. That realization landed hard. Strength was not on her side, and she knew it instantly. She tried to speak. The words came out wrong. Too quiet. Too broken. Fear does that. It steals clarity. It makes your voice sound small even when you need it to be loud. Her throat felt tight, like it was closing in on itself, and every sound took effort. Her backpack slipped down her arm, dragging against her elbow. It was a small thing, but it made everything worse. She wanted to reach for it, to hold on to something familiar, something that belonged to her. She could not move enough to do it. That helplessness settled in, heavy and confusing. She looked around for faces she recognized. Houses she passed every day. Cars she had seen parked in the same spots for months. Everything looked the same as it always had, and that made what was happening feel unreal. Like this could not be happening here, to her, on this street. Her thoughts scattered. She wondered if she had done something wrong. Children often do. She replayed the last few minutes in her head, trying to find the mistake that led to this. That instinct to blame herself crept, and even as fear took over, the pressure increased. Her body responded by going still. Not because she gave up, but because fighting felt pointless in that moment. She learned, without being taught, that resistance only made things worse. That lesson burned itself into her muscles and her memory. Time slowed. Seconds stretched longer than they should have. Every sound felt sharp. A car door closing somewhere far away. A dog barking. Wind moving through trees. Ordinary noises continued while her own world felt like it was collapsing inward. She felt exposed. Not just physically, but emotionally. Being overpowered made her feel small in a way she had never felt before. Smaller than her age. Smaller than her body. Smaller than her voice. She wanted to disappear from the moment entirely. Her heart raced so fast it felt like it might break out of her chest. She could feel it in her ears, pounding, drowning out everything else. Her hands trembled, even though she tried to keep them still. She did not want to make them angrier. She did not know what would happen if she did. She searched again for help, this time with urgency, not expectation. She did not scream. She could not. Her body refused. Instead, her eyes moved, scanning for movement, for any sign that someone would notice what she could not stop. What hurt almost as much as the grip was the waiting. Waiting for something to change. Waiting for someone to step in. Waiting for the moment to end. Waiting while nothing happened. That waiting filled her with a quiet panic that felt endless. Her thoughts jumped to her mother. Not in a dramatic way, just a sudden need for her presence. For the way her voice sounded. For the way she stood when things were not right. That thought gave her a brief spark of comfort, followed by the crushing reality that her mother was not there. She felt the edges of herself blur. Fear does that too. It pulls you out of your body just enough to survive what is happening. She focused on small things. The roughness of the sidewalk beneath her shoes. The weight of her backpack strap against her arm. Anything to stay grounded. Being pushed to the edge does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a child standing very still, eyes wide, breathing shallow, waiting for the moment to pass because there is no other option left. She did not arrive in a rush of noise or panic. No shouting down the street. No frantic movements. She arrived with speed, yes, but also with control. The kind of control that comes from years of training where hesitation costs lives. Her presence shifted the air before anyone fully understood who she was. She took in the scene in seconds. The child. The positioning of the bodies. The hands where they did not belong. The tension. The fear. There was no confusion in her face. No need to ask questions. She did not need context. The situation explained itself. Her posture changed first. Shoulders squared. Feet planted. A stillness settled over her that felt heavier than shouting ever could. People who had been watching from a distance felt it immediately, even if they could not explain why. Something had entered the moment that did not belong to the passive rhythm of the neighborhood. She did not announce her credentials. She did not threaten. She did not posture for attention. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and precise. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. It carried authority without effort. The kind that does not need volume to be obeyed. The attackers noticed it too. Their focus broke. Their confidence wavered. They had been operating in a space of silence and inaction, and suddenly that space was gone. They were no longer the only adults in control. Someone else had stepped in who understood exactly how to take it back. Her eyes never left their hands. She watched for movement, for intent, for escalation. Her body angled slightly, positioning herself between them and her daughter without touching anyone yet. It was a calculated choice. Distance can be as powerful as force when used correctly. The neighborhood that had been frozen moments before felt different now. People leaned forward instead of back. Curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. The bystanders sensed that the balance had changed, even if they were late to understand why. She gave clear instructions. Short sentences. No room for misinterpretation. Her tone left no space for argument or delay. This was not a request. It was a command delivered without emotion, which made it more unsettling than anger. The schoolgirl felt it immediately. The pressure eased just enough for her to breathe again. Not freedom yet, but possibility. The presence of her mother cut through the fear like a blade. Even before she was fully out of danger, something inside her unclenched. The attackers froze. Not because they suddenly found morality, but because they recognized capability. They sensed that this woman knew exactly what she was doing, that she had dealt with worse situations than this. that she was not guessing. Training showed in everything she did. The way she stood, the way she spoke, the way she controlled the space without touching it. This was not emotional reaction. This was disciplined response. Years of experience condensed into a few critical moments. She placed herself fully between them and her daughter now. Her hand reached back without looking, steady and reassuring. The contact was brief but grounding. A signal. I'm here. You're not alone anymore. Her focus never softened, even then. Protection came first. Comfort could wait. That priority was instinctive. She kept her eyes forward, scanning, calculating, prepared for any movement. The attackers did not move. They could not. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. This one was heavy with tension, not apathy. It pressed down on everyone watching. The same street that had allowed abuse to hide now held a confrontation it could not ignore. People later said they had never seen anything like it. No yelling, no chaos, just control asserting itself where it had been absent. The kind of authority that does not come from position or rules, but from competence. Her calm was not kindness. It was restraint, a deliberate choice to end the situation without becoming part of the spectacle. She did not need to prove anything. The shift in power was already complete. The attackers backed down because they had no other option left. The moment they relied on silence and hesitation, it vanished. In its place stood someone who did not hesitate, did not look away, did not wait for permission to protect her child. The shift did not happen with force. It happened with understanding. The attackers realized, almost at the same time, that the environment they had been relying on no longer existed. The quiet street was no longer passive. The silence no longer protected them. Control had moved out of their hands and into someone else's. Moments earlier, they had felt untouchable, surrounded by stillness, shielded by hesitation, empowered by the belief that no one would challenge them. That confidence drained away when they saw who stood in front of them. Not just a parent, but someone trained to assess threats and neutralize them without hesitation. They stiffened. Their bodies gave them away before their faces did. Muscles tightened. Breathing changed. Their movements slowed, not out of calm, but out of calculation. They were no longer acting freely. They were reacting. The Navy SEAL did not raise her voice or her hands. She did not need to. She held the space with presence alone. Every second she stood there reinforced the truth they were trying to avoid. They were no longer in charge of what happened next. Power is often mistaken for volume or aggression. In reality, it is clarity. She knew exactly what she was willing to do, and they could sense it. That certainty pressed in on them, removing every illusion they had built around themselves. The schoolgirl felt the change too. It was subtle but unmistakable. The air felt different. The pressure that had pinned her in place loosened. Fear did not vanish, but it shifted. It no longer dominated the moment. It shared space with relief, with trust, with the knowledge that someone capable stood between her and harm. The attackers tried to maintain their composure, but it slipped. Their eyes darted. Their posture lost its confidence. They were aware now of witnesses, of consequences, of exposure. The same people they had counted on to stay silent suddenly felt like liabilities. The mother's control forced a reckoning, not through threats, but through inevitability. There was no scenario where this ended well for them if they continued. They understood that. Training had taught her to project outcomes clearly, and they were reading them in her stance. Bystanders felt it as well. Some felt shame rise in their chests. Others felt relief that someone had finally stepped in. A few felt admiration, mixed with discomfort, for how quickly the situation had changed once real authority appeared. The neighborhood's illusion of safety cracked. People realized that rules and signs had not protected the child. Courage had been missing. Decisiveness had been missing. And now, suddenly, it was present in overwhelming measure. The attackers disengaged not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Their hands moved away. Their bodies created distance. Every motion signaled retreat. They had lost the advantage they never should have had. The mother did not chase victory. She maintained control. Her focus stayed forward, her awareness wide. She did not relax. Situations like this end only when they are truly over, and she treated it that way. Her daughter stood behind her now, no longer exposed. The physical positioning mattered. It sent a clear message. The child was protected. Access was denied. The boundary was absolute. People watching struggled to reconcile what they were seeing. The calm dominance contrasted sharply with the violence that had come before. It forced an uncomfortable realization. Intervention had always been possible. It just required someone willing to act. The attackers said little, if anything. Words were unnecessary. Their loss of control was complete. The street that had once worked in their favor now felt hostile, watchful, awake. The power shift was not dramatic, but it was total. It rewrote the moment. What began as an act of abuse ended as a confrontation they could not win. The presence of one trained, determined parent exposed how fragile their confidence had always been. The neighborhood would remember this moment differently, depending on where people stood. Some would replay what they should have done. Others would cling to the comfort that it was finally handled. But for the attackers, there was no reframing it. They had chosen silence and hesitation as their cover, and the moment someone who did not hesitate stepped in, everything they relied on collapsed around them.